Tamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So I first beg the blessings of the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Today we can read and dive into Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10. And we're going to start on text 1, the Advent of Lord Krishna, introduction. But to give a little, I guess, preliminary talk on Srimad Bhagavatam, because this week, or this Friday, is, and I saw yesterday there was somebody who wrote on the, I guess the ISKCON Denver Facebook, birthday, question mark, not understanding that Janmashtami, Janma, means birth. And so this week we're going to be observing the birthday of the Supreme Absolute Truth, who is not born, is unborn. So how do we understand these things? And as we spoke about during Balaram Jayanti, that just as we take our shoes off at the front door of the temple, we also have to leave our mundane mind and logic at the front door of the temple also, and grab a hold of our spiritual senses, our spiritual intelligence. We've been going over on Sundays how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, his heart is hard with logic. So logic and reason, how can we understand that which is achintya? Mahabharata has a beautiful verse about achintya, that the mundane senses and the mundane mind cannot grab a hold of that which is transcendental. Krishna consciousness isn't just a mechanical system where one can force God to descend into their consciousness. We chant our japa, right? We sit down with our beads, Hare Krishna, chant. We follow the rules and regulations of bhakti. We do so many things, but it's not just a mechanical process that, I'll sit down and automatically God's going to descend. No, we have to achieve the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then we can actually properly understand transcendence when Krishna gives us his mercy. So to look at Srimad Bhagavatam, and especially, in preparation for Krishna Janmashtami, how is it that the absolute truth, who's unborn, becomes born? Right? Krishna speaks about this in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Chime Divyam, Evam Yoveti Tatvadaha Taktva Deha Puna Janma Naiti Mamiti Sojana. So this verse talks about how the Janma and Karma of Krishna is Divya, it's transcendental. The rest of the conditioned souls in this world, they're forced to take upon a particular body to fit their particular swabhav, mood, for enjoyment, and their particular karma that they've acquired over millions and millions of births, and even more births than that. And so when one is able to understand the Janma and Karma, the transcendental birth and the transcendental activities of Krishna, then one does not have to take birth again. One is free from the cycle of birth and death. Vijay Krishna Prabhu brought up a question after Tulsi Vallabha's class yesterday about any intelligent person tries to avoid death. Well, anything that's born automatically has to die. It's the nature of the world. That which has a beginning also has an end. So everybody is going to die that's born. And so the real power of Krishna consciousness and understanding Krishna's birth and activities is to stop birth, which automatically stops death. So if you really want to stop death, then we have to absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness. And the best way to do that is by reading and diving into Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Rupa Goswami, whose disappearance day was last Tuesday, we spoke about his glories and instructions in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the instruction guidebook for Bhakti Yoga. He talks about 5 most potent items that actually, just by surrendering to one of these, what to speak of surrendering to all 5, if one just surrenders to one of these, one can easily achieve love of God. Chanting the holy names, living at a holy place like Mathura, Vrindavan, Mayapur, worshiping the deity, associating with the devotees, and then reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And even reading Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful instruction on how one should take shelter of those in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So those who are rasikas, those who know rasa, the different mellows and the science of interacting with Krishna on a spiritual platform, and one who's more advanced. So we have Srila Prabhupada's purports to guide us in reading Srimad Bhagavatam, so that our Srimad Bhagavatam study, it also means reading Srila Prabhupada's purports. And so Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna. This is an important point to understand also, that Srimad Bhagavatam is directly Krishna. So in the Padma Purana, it talks about the form of Krishna as Srimad Bhagavatam. So the first and second cantos of the Bhagavatam are Sri Krishna's lotus feet. The third and fourth cantos are his thighs. The fifth canto is his navel. The sixth canto is his chest. The seventh and eighth cantos are his arms. The ninth canto is his throat. The 10th canto is his beautiful lotus face. The 11th canto is his forehead. The 12th canto is his head. I bow down to that Lord, the ocean of mercy, whose color is like that of a tamal tree, and who appears in this world for the welfare of all. I worship him as the bridge for crossing the unfathomable ocean of material existence. The Bhagavatam has appeared as his very self. And so our acharyas, our teachers, they give so much stress to reading Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, Krishna, who's come to experience what it's like to be the topmost devotee, is constantly reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And they're going through all the different cantos. And when one first sees the deity in the temple room, when you have darshan of the deity, the respectful way to absorb your consciousness in the Lord through your eyes is by starting at the lotus feet. Then you slowly go up to the smiling face. So reading Srimad Bhagavatam means starting with the first canto and going all the way through. And our acharyas talk about how, and Srila Prabhupada discusses this quite regularly, how we should be a little bit careful of just jumping right into the 10th canto. So here we are jumping right into the 10th canto, but we've prepared a little bit. In our daily classes, we're reading systematically through Srimad Bhagavatam. On our own, we're trying to read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so why should we systematically go through Srimad Bhagavatam rather than just jump to the 10th canto? Because we're going to misunderstand Krishna's birth and activities as being mundane. Even though it's quite interesting when you read Srila Prabhupada's introduction to Krishna book, he says even materialists who think that these pastimes of Krishna are on a mundane platform, they'll even be delivered if they appreciate the pastimes of Krishna. But for us, we should carefully understand what's being presented in terms of Krishna's pastimes. I mean, this is why there's so much philosophy in the first canto. Second canto goes through creation, goes through so many topics, so that we can when we get to the 10th canto and we hear about Krishna stealing butter. Right? Oh, God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, aham evasam eva agre nanyad yet sarasat param, that supreme absolute truth, which is the cause of all causes, right? Everything is in this world is from a cause and effect, right? There's cause and then there's an effect. Then from that, there's another cause, then there's an effect, then there's another cause and effect, on and on and on. The supreme absolute truth is beyond all cause and effect. He's the one who is the cause of all causes and all effects. And he's stealing butter. He's doing so many activities that we might think are, wait, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's stealing butter? But properly understanding who those devotees are that are making that butter, what is the transcendental substance of that butter, which is the manifestation of the love of the devotees who are laboring hard to please Krishna's transcendental senses with transcendental substance. And then it'll bring us to a higher and higher level, rather than we hear this and, oh, it's some nice story. It might be mythology, or, or we mistake it for something that's mundane. And so to properly enter into Srimad Bhagavatam, now one might say, well, what about Krishna books? Srila Prabhupada gave us the 10th canto very early, right? Very early in our movement, he gave Krishna book, and then even wanted those distributed. Krishna book is laden with Srila Prabhupada's, you could say, bhava, his spiritual ecstasies. He's written in, he's written Krishna book in such a way where even if you're a beginner, you're not going to think that these pastimes are mundane or just a mythology. He's woven in his beautiful realizations so that we won't trip and fall while we're reading it. So Srimad Bhagavatam is manifest by Srila Vyasadeva in his maturity, right? He had written Puranas, he had written Mahabharata, he split the Vedas, taught others all about the Vedas, wrote Vedanta Sutra. Still, he's not satisfied. Narada Muni comes to him and says that, well, you're not satisfied because you have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. Beautiful how Sri Narada Muni states that the philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. So there's so many philosophies. I was going over one verse yesterday. Atma parigyana mayo vivado yastiti nastiti bidarta nishtam. I always forget the last two lines. Varto pinaivo parameta pungsa. Oh, Krishna. What's the last line? Svadhyaya lokat. Anyway, the verse is talking about how Atma Parigana Mayo Vivado, because people are engaged in discussions, Vivado, that are absorbed in the dualities of this world. They're unable to understand Atma Parigyana, that the super soul, everything is resting on the super soul. Because they're unable to understand that everything is resting on the super soul, the supreme Atma, then they're in this discussion, this world is unreal, this world is real. It's based on material dualities, but they're addicted to it. They're unable to give up different kinds of philosophy. Why? Because Vrita, they've turned away from Krishna's lotus feet. Svadhyaya lokat, because they're not meditating and focused on Krishna's lotus feet, then philosophy becomes based on material dualities and it actually becomes addictive. And we're actually unable to give up battling the philosophy of, is this world unreal? Is this world real? So here Narada Muni is saying something so beautiful, that that philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. And so he instructs him on how to properly glorify the Lord, engage him in bhakti yoga so that he actually has personal darshan of Krishna. Then he teaches his son, Shukadev Goswami, who tastes Srimad Bhagavatam, has his own realizations, Anubhava, he has his own realizations after tasting it, and then he comes to give it to Parikshit Maharaj, who has 7 days to live. And so Shukadev Goswami speaks Srimad Bhagavatam to him in 7 days. He's cursed to live only a short amount of time, and so he wants to clearly understand how to stop birth and death, which we talked about in the beginning. And that's by hearing the pastimes of Krishna, which are told in Srimad Bhagavatam. And so the pastimes of Krishna directly are in the 10th canto, which represent the smiling face of Krishna. And there's so many different incarnations and understandings to get to the 10th canto to properly understand it. So that's a little introduction to what we're going to read so that we can have the proper sankalpa of entering into today's reading. to properly enter into Srimad Bhagavatam. We want Sorry about that. So, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, you have a question. Is it that if we do not read Srimad Bhagavatam in the systematic way, you are recommending we are risking to understand Krishna not as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but as no better than an ordinary coward boy with a materialistic mind similar to ours, lusty, angry, and greedy? Please. So it's
Prabhu, you don't need to answer the question now.
Okay.
You can begin with the reading, and then I can wait until the end of the class.
Okay, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right. So, reading from Canto 10, Chapter 1, Text 1, The Advent of Lord Krishna, Introduction. Text 1. So, this sets up Parikshit Maharaj asking questions to Shukadev Goswami. Shirajavacha Katito Vangsa Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayo Ragyam Chobhaya Vangsyanam Charitam Paramadbhutam. King Parikshit said, "My dear Lord, you have elaborately described the dynasties of both the moon god and the sun god with the exalted and wonderful character of their kings." Purport. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. At the end of the 9th canto, 24th chapter, Shukadev Goswami summarized the activities of Krishna. He spoke of how Krishna had personally appeared to reduce the burden on the earth, how he had manifested his pastimes as a householder, and how soon after his birth he had transferred himself to his Vraj Bhumi Leela. Parikshit Maharaj, being naturally a devotee of Krishna, wanted to hear more about Lord Krishna. Therefore, to encourage Shukadev Goswami to continue speaking about Krishna and give further details, he thanked Shukadev Goswami for having described the activities of Krishna in brief. Shukadev Goswami had said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, known as Leela Purushottama, appeared as the son of Vasudeva, but immediately left his father's home and went to Vrindavan to expand his loving relationships with his confidential devotees. In Vrindavan, the Lord killed many demons, and afterward he returned to Dwarka, where according to Vedic principles, he married many wives who were the best of women, begot through them hundreds of sons, and performed sacrifices for his own worship to establish the principles of householder life. This is quote from Srimad Bhagavatam 9:24-66. The Yadu dynasty belonged to the family descending from Soma, the moon god. Although the planetary systems are so arranged that the sun comes first before the moon, Parikshit Maharaj gave more respect to the dynasty of the moon god, the Somavamsa, because in the Yadava dynasty descending from the moon, Krishna had appeared. There are two different Kshatriya families of the royal order, one descending from the king of the moon planet and the other descending from the king of the sun. Whenever the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he generally appears in a Kshatriya family because he comes to establish religious principles and the life of righteousness. According to the Vedic system, the Kshatriya family is the protector of the human race. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Ramachandra, he appeared in the Surya Vamsa, the family descending from the sun god. And when he appeared as Lord Krishna, he did so in the Yadu dynasty or Yadu Vamsa, whose descent was from the moon god. In the 9th canto, 24th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a long list of the kings of the Yadu Vamsa. All the kings in both the Somavamsa and Suryavamsa were great and powerful, and Maharaj Parikshit praised them very highly. Ragyam Chabhaya Vangsyanam Charitam Paramadbhutam. Nonetheless, he wanted to hear more about the Somavamsa because that was the dynasty in which Krishna had appeared. The supreme abode of the personality of Godhead Krishna is described in Brahma Samhita as the abode of Chintamani. Chintamani prakara sanma sukalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhira bipadayantam. The Vrindavan Dham on this earth is a replica of that same abode. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 8:20, in the spiritual sky, there's another eternal nature transcendental to manifested and unmanifested matter. The manifested world can be seen in the form of many stars and planets, such as the sun and moon, but beyond this is the unmanifested, which is imperceptible to those who are embodied. And beyond this unmanifested matter is the spiritual kingdom, which is described in Bhagavad Gita as supreme and eternal. That kingdom is never annihilated. Although material nature is subject to repeated creation and annihilation, that spiritual nature remains as it is eternally. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that spiritual nature, the spiritual world, is described as Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, or Vrajadham. The elaborate description of the above-mentioned shloka from the 9th canto, Jatu Gata Pitra Girihad, will be found here in the 10th canto. Text 2. Yados Chidharma Salasya Nitaramuni Satama Tatrang Sena Vitirnasya Vishnur Viryana Sangsayana. Translation. O best of the Munis, you have also described the descendants of Yadu, who are very pious and strictly adherent to religious principles. Now, if you will, kindly describe the wonderful, glorious activities of Lord Vishnu or Krishna, who appeared in that Yadu dynasty with Baladev, his plenary expansion. Purport. The Brahma Samhita 5.1 explains that Krishna is the origin of the Vishnu Tattva. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. Yasyaika nishvasitakala matavalambhya jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanata Vishnur mahansaiha yasya kala visesho govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. The Brahmas, the heads of the innumerable universes, live only for the duration of one breath of Mahavishnu. I worship Govinda, the original Lord, of whom Mahavishnu is but a portion of a plenary portion. Brahma Samhita 5:48. Govinda, Krishna, is the original personality of Godhead. Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. Even Lord Mahavishnu, who by his breathing creates many millions upon millions of universes, is Lord Krishna's Kala Vishesha, or plenary portion of a plenary portion. Mahavishnu is a plenary expansion of Sankarshan, who is a plenary expansion of Narayan. Narayan is a plenary expansion of the Chaturvyuha, and the Chaturvyuha are plenary expansions of Baladev, the first manifestation of Krishna. Therefore, when Krishna appeared with Baladev, all the Vishnu tattvas appeared with him. Maharaj Parikshit requested Shukadev Goswami to describe Krishna and his glorious activities. Another meaning may be derived from this verse as follows. Although Shukadev Goswami was the greatest Muni, he could describe Krishna only partially, angsena, for no one can describe Krishna fully. It is said that Anantadev has thousands of heads, But although he tries to describe Krishna with thousands of tongues, his descriptions are still incomplete. Text 3. Avatirya Yadorvangse Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanaha Kirtavanyani Vishvatma Tani Novada Vistarat. Translation: the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the cause of the cosmic manifestation, appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. Please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character from the beginning to the end of his life. Purport. In this verse, the words Kirtavanyani indicate that all the different activities Krishna performed while present on earth are beneficial to human society. If religionists, philosophers, and people in general simply hear the activities of Krishna, they will be liberated. We have described several times that there are two kinds of Krishna Katha, represented by Bhagavad Gita, spoken personally by Krishna about himself, and Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Shukadeva Goswami about the glories of Krishna. Anyone who becomes even slightly interested in Krishna Katha is liberated. Kirtanad eva Krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajet. Bhagavatam 12:3-51. Simply by chanting or repeating Krishna Katha, one is liberated from the contamination of Kali Yuga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised, Yare Deka Tare Kaha Krishna Upadesh. This is the mission of Krishna consciousness, to hear about Krishna and thus be liberated from material bondage. Text 4. Navrittatarshad upagiyamanad bhavoshadat chotra manobhiramad ka utamashloka gunanuvadat puman vidajeta vina pashugnat. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Purport. In India, it is the practice among the general populace to hear about Krishna, either from Bhagavad Gita or from Srimad Bhagavatam, in order to gain relief from the disease of repeated birth and death. Although India is now fallen, when there is a message that someone will speak about Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, thousands of people still gather to hear. This verse indicates, however, that such recitation of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam must be done by persons completely freed from material desires, navritta tarshai. Everyone within this material world, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, is full of material desires for sense enjoyment, and everyone is busy in sense gratification. But when thus engaged, one cannot fully understand the value of Krishna Katha, either in the form of Bhagavad Gita or in Srimad Bhagavatam. If we hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from liberated persons, this hearing will certainly free us from the bondage of material activities. But hearing Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by a professional reciter cannot actually help us achieve liberation. Krishna Katha is very simple. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As he himself explains, Mata parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya. O Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Bhagavad Gita 7:7. Simply by understanding this fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become a liberated person. But, especially in this age, because people are interested in hearing Bhagavad Gita from unscrupulous persons who depart from the simple presentation of Bhagavad Gita and distort it for their personal satisfaction, they fail to derive the real benefit. There are big scholars, politicians, philosophers, and scientists who speak on Bhagavad Gita in their own polluted way, and people in general hear from them, being uninterested in hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from a devotee. A devotee is one who has no other motive for reciting Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam than to serve the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore advised us to hear the glories of the Lord from a realized person, Bhagavat Parodiya Bhagavat Sthane. Unless one is personally a realized soul in the science of Krishna consciousness, a neophyte should not approach him to hear about the Lord, for this is strictly forbidden by Srila Sanatana Goswami, who quotes from the Padma Purana, Vaishnava Mukod Girnam Putam Harikatamritam Shravanam Naiva Kartavyam Sarpochishtam Yatapaya. One should avoid hearing from a person not situated in Vaishnav behavior. A Vaishnava is Navritta Trishna. That is, he has no material purpose, for his only purpose is to preach Krishna consciousness. So-called scholars, philosophers, and politicians exploit the importance of Bhagavad Gita by distorting its meaning for their own purposes. Therefore, this verse warns that Krishna Katha should be recited by a person who is Navritta Trishna. Shukadeva Goswami epitomizes the proper reciter for Srimad Bhagavatam, and Parikshit Maharaj, who purposefully left his kingdom and family prior to meeting death, epitomizes the person fit to hear it. A qualified reciter of Srimad Bhagavatam gives the right medicine, bhavoshadhi, for the conditioned souls. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to train qualified preachers to recite Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita throughout the entire world, so that people in general in all parts of the world may take advantage of this movement and thus be relieved of the threefold miseries of material existence. The instructions of Bhagavad Gita and the descriptions of Srimad Bhagavatam are so pleasing that almost anyone suffering from the threefold miseries of material existence will desire to hear the glories of the Lord from these books and thus benefit on the path of liberation. Two classes of men, however, will never be interested in hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are determined to commit suicide and those determined to kill cows and other animals for their satisfaction of their own tongues. Although such persons may make a show of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam at a Bhagavat Saptaha, this is but another creation of the karmis who cannot derive any benefit from such a performance. So Bhagavat Saptaha, Saptaha means 7, Bhagavat, reciting Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days. There's professional reciters of Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures. In India, they have these big celebrations and festivals for 7 days of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. The word Pashugnat is important in this connection. Pashugna means butcher. Persons fond of performing ritualistic ceremonies for elevation to the higher planetary systems must offer sacrifices, yagyas, by killing animals. Lord Buddhadev therefore rejected the authority of the Vedas because his mission was to stop animal sacrifices, which are recommended in Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Nindasi yagya vidar ahashuta jahatam sadaya hridaya darshita pashugatam Keshavadrita Buddha Sharira Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. From the introduction to Gita Govinda. Even though animal sacrifices are sanctioned in Vedic ceremonies, men who kill animals for such ceremonies are considered butchers. Butchers cannot be interested in Krishna consciousness, for they are already materially allured. Their only interest lies in developing comforts for the temporary body. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya parita chetasam vyavasatmika buddhi samadao navadiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Bhagavad Gita 2:44. Srila Narottama Das Thakur says, Manushya Janama Paya Radha Krishna Na Bhajiya Janiya Suniya Vishakainu. Anyone who's not Krishna conscious and who therefore does not engage in the service of the Lord is also Pashugna, for he is willingly drinking poison. Such a person cannot be interested in Krishna Katha because he still has a desire for material sense gratification. He is not Nivritta Trishna. As it is said, Trai Vargikaste Purusha Vimukha Hari Medasaha. Those interested in Trivarga, that is, in Dharma, Artha, and Kama, are religious for the sake of achieving a material position with which to gain better facilities for sense gratification. Such persons are killing themselves willingly, keeping themselves in the cycle of birth and death. They cannot be interested in Krishna consciousness. For Krishna Katha, topics about Krishna consciousness, there must be a speaker and a hearer, both of whom can be interested in Krishna consciousness if they are no longer interested in material topics. One can actually see how this attitude automatically develops in persons who are Krishna conscious. Although the devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement are quite young men, they no longer read materialistic newspapers, magazines, and so on, for they are no longer interested in such topics, nivritta tarshaya. They completely give up the bodily understanding of life. For topics concerning Uttama Shloka, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master speaks and the disciple hears with attention. Unless both of them are free from material desires, they cannot be interested in topics of Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master and disciple do not need to understand anything more than Krishna, because simply by understanding Krishna and talking about Krishna, one becomes a perfectly learned person. Kasmin bhagavo vigyate sarvam idam vigatam bhavati. The Lord sits within everyone's heart, and by the grace of the Lord, the devotee receives instructions directly from the Lord himself. It says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasichaham hridisa nivishto matas mritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedaischa sarver aham eva vedyo vedantakrit vedavid eva chaham. I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Krishna consciousness is so exalted that one who is perfectly situated in Krishna consciousness, under the direction of the spiritual master, is fully satisfied by reading Krishna Katha as found in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and similar Vedic literatures. Since merely talking about Krishna is so pleasing, you can simply imagine how pleasing it is to render service to Krishna. When discourses on Krishna Katha take place, a liberated spiritual master and his disciple, take place between a liberated spiritual master and his disciple, others also sometimes take advantage of hearing these topics and also benefit. These topics are the medicine to stop the repetition of birth and death. The cycle of repeated birth and death, by which one takes on different bodies again and again, is called bhava or bhava rog. If anyone willingly or unwillingly hears Krishna Katha, his bhava rog, the disease of birth and death, will certainly stop. Therefore, Krishna Katha is called bhavoshadha, the remedy to stop the repetition of birth and death. Karmis, or persons attached to material sense enjoyment, generally cannot give up their material desires, but Krishna Katha is such a potent medicine that if one is induced to hear Krishna Kirtan, he will certainly be freed from this disease. Practical example is Dhruva Maharaj, who at the end of his tapasya was fully satisfied. When the Lord wanted to give Dhruva benediction, Dhruva refused it. Swamin Kitartosmi Varam Nayache. My dear Lord, he said, I am fully satisfied. I do not ask for any benediction for material sense gratification. We actually see that even young boys and girls in the Krishna consciousness movement have given up their long practice of bad habits like illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. Because Krishna consciousness is so potent that it gives them full satisfaction, they are no longer interested in material sense gratification. I just wanted to skip ahead because there's something in this chapter, the first chapter of the 10th canto, which is quite interesting because we see Srila Prabhupada do something that we haven't seen him do with any other canto or book, is that he gives additional notes for this chapter, which is quite amazing because he dives into the quoting from the different acharyas, and he elaborates on Nivritta Tarshai. So I wanted to skip to that part. Not sure if anybody's reading along, but in this version of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's page 91 in the last paragraph of the page, and it starts with the word Nivritta Tarshai. So Srila Prabhupada elaborates that the word Nivritta Tarshai refers to one who no longer has any material desires. Sarvopadi Vinir Muktam. One may have many material desires because of contamination in this material world, but when one is completely free from all material desires, he is called Nivritta Trishna, which indicates that he no longer has any thirst for material enjoyment. Trishna means thirst. Swamin Kritartosmi Varam Nayache, from the Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya. Materialistic persons want some material profit from executing devotional service, but this is not the purpose of service. The perfection of devotional service lies in complete surrender unto the lotus feet of Krishna with no material desires. One who surrenders in this way is already liberated. Jivan Mukta Sa Uchate. One who's always busy serving Krishna in whatever condition he may live is understood to be liberated even in this life. Such a person who is a pure devotee does not need to change his body. Indeed, he does not possess a material body, for his body has already been spiritualized. An iron rod kept constantly within a fire will automatically become fire, and whatever it touches will burn. Similarly, the pure devotee is in the fire of spiritual existence, and therefore his body is chinmaya. That is, it is spiritual, not material, because the pure devotee has no desire but the transcendental desire to serve the Lord. In text 4, the word upagiyamana is used. Nivritta tarshar upagiyamana. Who will chant the glories of the Lord unless he is a devotee? Therefore, the word Nivritta tarshai indicates the devotee and no one else. These are the remarks of acharyas like Viraragava Acharya and Vijaya Dvaja. To desire anything other than devotional service will diminish one's freedom from material desires, but when one is free from all such desires, one is called Nivritta Tarshai. Vina Pashugna, the word Pashu means animal. An animal killer, Pashugna, cannot enter into Krishna consciousness. An animal killer, Pashugna, cannot enter into Krishna consciousness. In our Krishna consciousness movement, therefore, animal killing is completely prohibited. Uttama shloka gunanavadat, the word Uttama shloka means one who's famous as the best of those who are good. The Lord is good in all circumstances. That is his natural reputation. His goodness is unlimited, and he uses it unlimitedly. The devotee is also sometimes described as Uttama Shloka, meaning that he is eager to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the Lord's devotees. So even a devotee is also sometimes described as Uttama Shloka. Glorifying the Lord and glorifying the Lord's devotees are the same, or rather, glorifying the devotee is more important than glorifying the Lord directly. Narottam Das Thakur explains this fact. Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payeche Keba. One cannot be liberated from material contamination without sincerely serving a devotee of Krishna. And Bhavo Shadat means from the universal remedy. Chanting the holy name and glorifying the Supreme Lord are the universal remedy for all the miseries of materialistic life. Persons who desire to be freed from this material world are called mumukshu. Such persons can understand the miseries of materialistic life, and by glorifying the activities of the Lord, they can be released from all these miseries. The transcendental sound vibrations concerning the Lord's name, fame, form, qualities, and paraphernalia are all non-different from the Lord. Therefore, the very sound vibration of the Lord's glorification and name are pleasing to the ears, and by understanding the absolute nature of the Lord's name, form, and qualities, the devotee becomes joyful. Even those who are not devotees, however, enjoy the pleasing narration of the Lord's transcendental activities. Even ordinary persons, not very much advanced in Krishna consciousness, take pleasure in describing the narrations depicted in Srimad Bhagavatam. When a materialistic person is purified in this way, he engages in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Because glorification of the Lord's pastimes is very pleasing to the ear and heart of the devotee, it is simultaneously his subject and object. So, and this is a very interesting part. In this world, there are three kinds of men: those who are liberated, those who are trying to be liberated, and those entangled in sense enjoyment. Of these three, those who are already liberated chant and hear the holy name of the Lord, knowing perfectly well that to glorify the Lord is the only way to keep oneself in a transcendental position. Those who are trying to be liberated, the second class, may regard the chanting and hearing of the Lord's holy name as a process of liberation, and they too will feel the transcendental pleasure of this chanting. As for karmis and persons engaged in sense gratification, they may also take pleasure in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, like his fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and his dancing in Vrindavan with the gopis. So, the word Uttama Shloka Gunanuvad refers to the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord, such as his affection for Mother Yashoda and his friends, the cowherd boys, and his loving attitude toward the gopis. The Lord's devotees, like Maharaj Yudhishthira, are also described by the qualification Uttama Shloka Gunanuvad. The word Anuvad refers to describing the qualities of the Lord, of the Supreme Lord, or his devotees. When these qualities are described, other devotees are interested in hearing them. The more one is interested in hearing about these transcendental qualities, the more one transcendentally enjoys. Everyone, therefore, including the mumukshus, the vimuktas, and the karmis, should chant and hear the glories of the Lord, and in this way, everyone will benefit. Shri Krishna Katha ki jai. Shri Krishna Ashtami ki jai.
Jai.
So we'll stop here with the reading, and then Vijay Krishna Prabhu has a question. So question number one, is it that if we do not read Srimad Bhagavatam in the systematic way you are recommending, we're risking to understand Krishna not as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but as no better than an ordinary cowherd boy with a materialistic mind similar to ours, lusty, angry, and greedy, please. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that after?
No, I beg you on my knees for you to give me the answer, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So yeah, it's quite interesting, the last part here of the reading, how anyone can hear about Krishna and then feel joy and actually get benefit. So I just wanted to pull up something from Krishna book here. Because Srila Prabhupada says the same thing here that he says in his introduction to Krishna book. So Srila Prabhupada explaining that there's different personalities, those who are liberated, the mumukshus, those who are, those who are liberated, the devotees, those who are wanting to be liberated, and the vimuktas and the karmis, those who are engaged in sense gratification. Of those who are liberated, they're already hearing and chanting. And so in Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada says it is essential for persons who are actually liberated to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. That is the supreme relishable subject matter for one in the liberated state. And then he again talks about Krishna Katha, meaning two Krishna Kathas, spoken by Krishna and spoken about Krishna. So Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And then at the end here, it's very interesting that he says that as for karmis and persons engaged in sense gratification, they also take pleasure in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, like his fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and his dancing in Vrindavan with the gopis. So this is very interesting. Materialistic persons have not gone through all of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, bringing up a systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam is something that Srila Prabhupada and Acharyas have done so that we can fully understand what we're getting into when we get to the 10th canto, right? It's like anybody who goes to school, there's, a syllabus, there's a way in which you're going to learn. And to learn a subject matter properly, you have to start in the beginning with the basics. So if you're going to study English, you have to understand the alphabet. Then you have to understand nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives. You have to understand which words or what kind of words to either describe or name, place, and so on. Then you can start getting into more of the nuances and technicalities of the English language, how to properly write formulate a sentence, which, has a predicate, a noun, verb, on and on and on. So for us to begin with the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then not just stop at 10th canto, but then also go on to 11th canto, 12th canto, to fully relish Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, even it's not that the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't talk about Vrindavan. There's glorifications of the Vrindavan pastimes, even in Queen Kunti's prayers. So Bhagavatam is fully relished by those who are tasting rasa, because it's a rasa shastra. It's filled with rasa. But now, for us who are devotees and we're trying to systematically read, Srila Prabhupada brings up a point that is so amazing to really think about, that the karmis who are engaged in sense gratification, they can hear about the dancing in Vrindavan with the gopis. That's something that some devotees don't, sometimes we get into I would call it a false humility in terms of, oh, we can't go to certain places of Srila Prabhupada's books. Well, no, we should recognize, okay, I might not be on the platform of really diving deep, but I should still read all of Srila Prabhupada's books and study them deeply to then dive deeper into Krishna consciousness. So these things will actually raise our consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada says something really amazing in the introduction to Krishna book. This Krishna Katha will also be very much appealing to the most materialistic persons because Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, cowherd girls, are exactly like the loving affairs between young girls and boys within this material world. Actually, the sex feeling found in human society is not unnatural because that same sex feeling is there in the original personality of Godhead. The pleasure potency is called Srimati Radharani. The attraction of loving affairs on the basis of sex feeling is the original feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we, the conditioned souls, being part and parcel of the Supreme, have such feelings also, but they are experienced within a perverted, minute condition. Therefore, when those who are after sex life in this material world hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, they will relish transcendental pleasure, although it appears to be materialistic. That is a really far out statement by Srila Prabhupada, that even those who are materialistic, they are after sex life in this material world, when they hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, they will relish transcendental pleasure, even though it appears materialistic. That is a really amazing statement by Srila Prabhupada, because then what to speak of devotees who are engaged in service, trying not to seek sex life? What happens when they read about the gopis and Krishna? So he says the advantage will be that they will gradually be elevated to the spiritual platform. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that if one hears the pastimes of Lord Krishna with the gopis from authorities with submission, and that's the point, Nivritta Tarshar, to hear from Srila Prabhupada, and those who are Nivritta Tarshar, they're done Trishna, Nivritta Trishna, they no longer have a taste for materialism, but from hearing from proper authorities with submission, then he will be promoted to the platform of transcendental loving service to the Lord, and the material disease of lust within his heart will be completely vanquished. In other words, such hearing will counteract material sex life. So if we're hearing from the proper authorities with submission, then it'll actually kick out all the lust, all the anger, all the greed that's within our hearts. So really amazing statement by Srila Prabhupada that I always go back to when sometimes it's brought up that, oh, we're going to read Krishna book, we're going to read pastimes of, the higher Leelas, but then Srila Prabhupada's making a very significant statement here that is very powerful. So I don't, hopefully that answered your question in a satisfactory way. If not, if there's anything
No, Prabhu, better than satisfactory, very helpful, very complete, and very again, I must say it's scholarly answer to my question, Prabhu, and I will use it in relation to my preaching here in relation to my preaching project here in the Azores, Prabhu. That is the reason why I ask questions, because I'm preaching door to door with Srila Prabhupada's books, book distribution, and people ask me questions, sometimes deep questions, and the answer you just gave me helped me very, very, very much, Prabhu. Just outstanding. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai Shishi Guru and Guranga. Is there any other question or comment before we? Oh, Hare Krishna, humble obeisances.
Yeah, obeisances, Prabhu. Thank you so much. We're really getting ready for Janmashtami with these wonderful classes. Thank you. So I was just wondering about the dynasties. Some people think of the sun as, the greatest planet in some ways. And I guess because of the way it is. And, the moon is kind of there. But anyway, sometimes you get the question, well, did Krishna want to be in the Moon dynasty because he has all these wonderful special pastimes with Radharani and the gopis underneath the moon? And they want to know, is that why? And I don't know if there's any praman or anything for, why is there the sun? I mean, there's always reasons, obviously, behind everything that goes on. Why Ramachandra is in the sun dynasty, Krishna is in the moon. There's obviously reasons. But anyway, that was one time brought up, and I didn't know if there was any thing you could say on that. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's it's quite amazing how these dynasties, they actually become glorified by Krishna and Rama descending in those dynasties. And those dynasties, great personalities are born in those dynasties. Dasarat and Vasudev, they're great personalities that in the 9th canto, especially 24, it's the chapter 24, it's name after name after name of great personalities. And it is quite amazing to reflect on the sun and the moon. So today is Sunday, which is the first day of the week, technically, right? It's not the first day of the business week, which is Monday, but Sunday, when we look on the calendars, it's actually the first day, right? That's why Saturday is the Sabbath, or celebratory for many different religious people, because Saturday is the Sabbath, the last day. And then Srila Prabhupada would always bring up this point, how Sunday comes before Monday, so it goes sun and then moon. In terms of how Vedic cosmology, sun comes first and then moon, and then on and on the different planets until Saturday. But yeah, the pastimes with Krishna and the moon, which is quite interesting, how a lot of our huge celebrations are during the lunar day Purnima, Balaram Purnima, Gaur Purnima, and then the Ras Leelas take place on the Purnima. And to see the importance of the sun and the moon, which symbolically for us, the sun, we're chanting our Gayatri mantras, and we're praying to the sun, that the sun is opening up everything for us to see, basically. But there's a deeper connection with Sunday being the day where Srimati Radharani goes to worship the sun god. And she has such a deep connection with the sun that in her in her incarnation as a queen in Dwarka, she takes birth as Satyabhama. And Satrajit, what happens? He receives the jewel, the Shamantaka jewel from the sun god, which Srimati Radharani personally gives to the sun god to then give to Satrajit, and then he gives the jewel and his daughter to Krishna, Satyabhama. And so there's a deep connection between the original sun and sun god and Srimati Radharani. And then the moon also. The moon is so mysterious, and when you get into symbolism, then the moon actually is the lord of the mind, right? So when we see Purnimas, right, there's lunatics, those who are affected by Luna, the moon. And I was just telling Lolita this, that on Balaram Purnima, people get heightened. That's why there's so much mental activity with the moon. And I believe this last moon was full moon in Aquarius, where it's going to bring out so much creativeness and creativity, and to connect with the moon in that way, so that our mind is met up with creativity. And then to see how these two are the greatest luminary objects within our existence, right? We see the stars, we have lights, but the moon and the sun, I mean, we went to yesterday the Arsenal and saw the sunset, but it was just like you could see the mountains, and it was so dark with these clouds, but then the sun started setting, and the sun was like poking out of the clouds, and all you could see these like misty clouds all over the mountains, and we were just kind of like in awe of the beauty of it all. But it was because of the sun. So the sun and moon being the greatest luminaries in the world, it holds such powerful symbolism for us to understand that our life, right? We have a solar astrological chart, and then we have an astrological chart that can be read through the moon sign. So sun sign and moon sign, it kind of directs our karma. So what to speak of then having such a connection with Krishna, Srimati Radharani, and then what to speak of being born in those two powerful dynasties. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's any direct praman, because in chapter 24 talks about these different dynasties, and then how those are, and that's the interesting thing. They're the greatest of the luminaries, and then the two main, to actually be a kshatriya, bona fide kshatriya, you have to be born into either of those dynasties, coming from the moon dynasty or the sun dynasty. So just to bring up all of that. Sorry if I went on a weird tangent there, but if you would like to help me out in saying anything more about that, or anything you might have heard.
Thanks, Raghu. I remember how Prabhupada was answering the questions of the devotees, oh, Prabhupada, in India, they're all asking us, what gotra are you from? Like you Malechas, what's your gotra anyway? so Prabhupada said, Achyuta gotra, you tell them that, because Achyuta is Krishna and you are in Krishna's families. You tell them that's your gotra. And even in fire yajnas that we would do in the temple here in the past, everybody who took part, sometimes we had some of the South Indian devotees and our devotees doing it. And then they're asking for our gotras. And so we're all, Achyuta gotra. So I was just thinking, okay, well, hey, we're in that moon dynasty too. Anyway, just was something I thought about. Thanks a lot, Prabhu.
Thank you for the beautiful nectar. Okay, sorry it went a little late, 9:15. Thank you for your kind attention. Please forgive any faults. Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavani Vaishnavibhyo. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.